A rainbow halo is a touching remembrance to those who have lost a loved one to careless driving. It's also a reminder that inattentive or reckless driving can have deadly consequences.
It breaks my heart every time I hear a crash.
Several groups are making an effort to educate the public about how to make streets safer and teaching teens about the deadly consequences of street racing.
I don't think we've done enough, and we know we haven't.
And for those who struggle with words, there may be a new hope for a treatment. The subject of stuttering is getting a new focus now that we have a president who has also battled the condition.
It was really amazing to hear that someone like me became vice president.
We talked to a doctor about the latest research on the disorder that has left children and adults uncomfortable about speaking in public. Fox 11 News In Depth starts right now. Hello, everyone. I'm Hal Eisner. The subject of auto versus pedestrian collisions is a very personal one for me. You may recall it was just a few months ago when my photographer, Joab Perez, and I were on assignment and found ourselves run down by the driver of an SUV believed to be under the influence. Fortunately, no one died in that crash, but there were serious injuries. Bottom line is, we're a long way from solving the problem of innocent people being injured and killed on streets and highways in crashes. We're joined by a couple of people who are putting their efforts toward making sure the streets are as safe as they can possibly be. Lily Trujillo knows the pain of losing a loved one in a collision. She started StreetRacingKills.org after her daughter died in a street racing crash. And John Yee is the executive director of Los Angeles Walks. Let's start with you, Lily, and tell us a little bit about your daughter. I believe her name was what, Valentina? And she was 16 years old, is that right?
Yes, Valentina was 16 years old when she passed away due to a street racing crash. There was also some alcohol involved, her not having his seatbelt on as well. Had no idea, of course. She trusted the driver that decided to just suddenly engage into a street race and crashed and took her life back in 2013.
2013. And John, what does your organization do to try to deal with these things?
Yeah, so my organization is Los Angeles Walks. We're a pedestrian advocacy organization, and we partner with communities, with parents just like Lily, to make sure that we design our cities so that traffic is slower, that we prioritize community members that live in those communities where people often drive through, and that our streets are safer. Every 36 hours, an Angelino is killed in a car crash. And the leading cause of death of our elementary and middle school children are car crashes. And just from your story alone, there's a lot of work that we have left to do.
Well, and just from our story alone, there were a couple of other auto pedestrian accidents in the area at the time that ours happened. These are happening on a daily basis. And Lily, you know, you started this organization to try to have some impact. What impact have you had so far?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, the first thing that I want to do is make sure that no parent loses a child. That's how everything got started. And as I kept going, the organization started growing and growing and growing. We added not just St. Louis street racing, but I wanted to partner with other nonprofits as well that cover other subjects of traffic safety, like Los Angeles Walks, the Connor Lynch Foundation, Mad Mother Second Star Drivers. And the impact, I think, is amazing. Why? Because these teenagers now are not just getting one subject, but they're getting all of the subjects as well. Every time we see a boy tear up, we know right there we spare a parent from losing a child.
You know, to both of you, this question, and we'll start with Lily, what's it going to take to get people to be better drivers, to not be as distracted as some of them are, to not do things that are deadly and dangerous as they sometimes do? Lily.
I believe is starting from scratch. Education, mentoring, and laws.
John?
More laws. More bills to pass.
Yeah, no, I agree with Lily. I think education is important, making sure the public understands what it means to be behind a wheel. Laws are important too, but also I think at the end of the day, it's how we design our streets. If we design our streets where fast traffic is encouraged, where there are not a lot of visibility for pedestrians or bicyclists, then you're going to end up with this kind of situation. And so at the end of the day, it's how we design our streets and our communities that will really make a dent.
That seems like a very tall order, because we have streets, and I don't know how many gazillion miles of them here in Southern California. Yeah, you can't go back and start redesigning these streets.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but I think it's something that we have to tackle. But it's not just even redesigning streets. I think investing in things like public transit, so we have less people in cars and more people on our buses and subways, I think is another way of doing it. But we got to start somewhere, but it's got to start with street design.
And maybe walking where you can, as opposed to driving when you don't really necessarily have to. And Lily, what have you found to be some of the best advice you've given people as you become more and more of, tragically, an expert in this situation?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I had no idea. I was just a single parent at the time, and now I'm so involved, and I know a little too much about everything regarding traffic safety. No, I give so much advice. But trust the driver. If you are not the driver, you got to make sure that the person you get in the car with is that you can trust that person. And always be safe, always have your seatbelt on. And I always tell the teens to stand up for themselves and know what to do if they're in a bad situation. So advice, even to adults, if you're in the back seat, make sure you have your seatbelt on. A lot of adults don't do that. They don't think it's important. Same thing, you can take an Uber. There's so much advice that we can give out there, but especially we like educating our youth more than anything. But definitely, as adults, I think we're all children inside as well.
John, talk about rainbow halos.
Sure. So the Rainbow Halo is a memorial that's done by the LA Department of Transportation. It's set up on areas where there's been traffic fatalities. So as you heard of Valentina, Lily's daughter, in Wilmington, we put up a Rainbow Halo there. And the primary purpose of these Rainbow Halos is first to give families an opportunity to grieve and give something back to the streets. And the second is these Rainbow Halos serves as reminders to the community, to people walking, that their crash has happened there. And so that there is a need for change, that there's need for safer streets. So it's a way of pushing the city for its Vision Zero commitment, which is zero traffic fatalities by 2025.
Well, we just have a minute left. Lily, what's the final thought from you?
Be safe. You have the power when your hands are on the wheel every day, and you have that power to have the mindset to come back home every day, to watch your favorite show. Everybody that comes out plans to come back home at the end of the day. So be safe at the wheel and be responsible.
And John, one final thought.
Yeah, I would encourage everyone to go out and walk around your community. Check out your streets, see how they're designed, and ask yourselves, would I feel safe there? Would I feel safe putting my children out there? And if they're not, it's time to start organizing and really fighting for safer streets.
Grassroots efforts, right? Grassroots
Exactly.
efforts. All right, John, Lily, thank you very much. Coming up on Fox 11 News In Depth, a new focus on stuttering with President Biden, a longtime stutterer in the White House. We talk about the challenges, the bullying, and the success stories right after this. Don't go away. Welcome back to Fox 11 News In Depth. I'm Hal Eisner, and we're talking about a speech disorder that's so common that most people don't even think twice about it. Stuttering affects about 1% of the adult population. That's about 3 million people in the United States alone. In fact, many people still aren't aware that President Biden stutters. But for those who have struggled, it is inspirational.
It was really amazing to hear that someone like me became vice president. He told me about a book of poems by Yeats he would read out loud to practice. He showed me how he marks his addresses to make them easier to say out loud. Joe Biden cared. Imagine what he could do for all of us.
It's interesting to listen to him. That's 13-year-old Braden Harrington delivering a speech in support of Joe Biden last year. The teen met the then candidate a couple of months before, and Biden told him that they had something in common. And there are a lot of other people who have stuttering in common with those two, including our next guest, Dr. Geraldd Maguire, a professor of psychiatry and neuroscience at UC Riverside School of Medicine. Thanks for joining us. And, I guess we should point out right off the top that this is an issue for you as well.
True. Yes. And not only for me, for my older brother, my uncles. Yes.
And so,
Yeah.
when we talk about stuttering, why does it happen? What can we tell people about the disorder?
Got it. Right. So stuttering, most forms of stuttering begin in childhood. It's a developmental condition, if I say, and we're learning more about the wiring of the brain. For years, we had misconception that this was a disorder of just anxiety and a disorder of the tongue and throat. But it's really, we've learned now that it's a condition of a miswiring of the circuits of the brain that control speech, specifically the timing and the initiation of speech.
Do we have new research on this? Do we have new studies that show us anything about what can be done?
Yeah, right. So we have more research that's come out, especially in the last 20 years, Hal, that really shows the neurology behind stuttering. And that stuttering also affects our psychological function and our social functioning at times too. So yeah, we're learning more about the certain chemicals in the brain that may not be in the right levels. And we're actually beginning medical treatments now. And we have research trials on those ongoing.
There's some famous people who we all know, and frankly, I didn't know were stutterers. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was a stutterer. I had no idea. Samuel Jackson, I've interviewed him one-on-one. I had no idea. And Nicole Kidman, I've interviewed one-on-one. I had no idea.
Yeah. Well, many people who stutter, we are good at avoiding, well, we shouldn't be, but we sometimes will avoid certain words that we fear, or we avoid certain situations, or we might even disguise our voice and be able to kind of speak in a way that maybe is more covert about our own stuttering, and you might not hear it. And so stuttering is not really just what the listener hears, but what the person on the inside actually feels. And for many of us, it's a mental.
It may well be, though, that what you're talking about there is the idea of switching words. So instead of saying I had 3 brothers, I had 3 siblings.
Correct. Right. So we pick, and Porky Pig was very good at this, right? We don't focus on him as a role model for a person who stutters, but it's called word substitution. And for many of us, something that I unfortunately developed at a young age is to avoid certain feared words. And unfortunately, many people who stutter, and part of our therapies are to overcome these avoidances and to actually confront, but avoiding certain situations or electronic communications like phone or even Zoom like this.
When I was a kid, Porky Pig as a cartoon was very funny. But you know what? If you're a stutterer, I suppose that's not necessarily the case.
It's not, right? And for me as a kid growing up, it was hard to hear, right? But even movies like A Fish Called Wanda coming out and others where there's a mocking of stuttering. And I even believe that President Biden has mentioned that it's one of the few conditions that unfortunately people can still make fun of, and it is a disability, and we really need to really decrease the stigma and the discrimination, especially for kids. We really need to stop this mocking.
But we have more of a spotlight on it because we have a president who has issues with stuttering and has during his life. But what are some of the emotional things that tie to this? Bullying certainly is one of them. It
is, right. And for the bullying of that child, and also as a kid growing up, there's positives in it. One positive thing is that I think it breeds a level of humbleness in us. But it's a level of empathy with others. But negatively, we as age, what is the struggle? There's social anxiety that can develop with those of us who stutter, and avoidances of certain social situations and occupationals, and being an occupational choices, but also being misjudged by others as not being intelligent because we're maybe taking more time on our words, right?
So it's also incumbent on us who are not stutterers to be patient and to understand and be empathetic.
Absolutely, Hal, and I really appreciate this opportunity to speak about that, and to that there's a lot of as a psychiatrist, I'm in the most verbal field of medicine, but my patients have never complained about my stuttering, but one virtue that we have is that if we listen well, right? And we persons who stutter, we can communicate just as well as anyone. Just might take us a little bit longer, right? And that individuals should not judge us just because of the pace of our speech or the hesitation that might actually be there.
All right, doctor, stand by for just a second. Coming up on Fox 11 News in Depth, we'll continue with Dr. Maguire, and we'll talk about how stuttering can be managed and a clinical trial of a potentially new drug treatment. Right after this, don't go away. Welcome back to Fox 11 News in Depth. I'm Hal Eisner. We're with Dr. Geraldd Maguire right now. This is a doctor, psychiatrist who deals with stuttering. He himself has dealt with stuttering. You know, I do want to ask you one thing before we move forward. Mel Tillis, for those of us of a certain age who remember him, stuttered terribly, but when he sang, he never stuttered once.
Right, and how that's because we use a different pathway in the brain when we sing. If we have rhythmic influences, either speaking to a metronome or singing, 99% of those of us who have the childhood form of onset of stuttering are fluent when we sing.
There are no cures, right? Just symptoms.
Yeah, right. But I would like to say there are no cures of many things in medicine, right? Especially brain conditions, right? We treat diabetes, we treat major depressive disorder, we don't cure them. So stuttering's no different than that.
What are some of the therapies that you use, and what works best with some of your patients?
God, great thought. So looking forward is really bringing in a comprehensive model, and that stuttering is a neurologic condition that can impact one's social functioning and psychological well-being. So moving forward is that I work with the team, bringing in psychotherapies. We know that some forms of psychotherapy help adjust to the psychological aspects or the anxiety conditions, and as well as into support groups for society, for us to feel that we're not alone as persons who stutter, from the societal aspect. But from the medical standpoint, this is where we're also getting some real breakthroughs. We're developing pharmacologic treatments, and we actually have some good data now with many of them that supports the use of these compounds, not as cures by any means, but working like we do with other conditions in a comprehensive way to enhance the treatments and enhancing outcomes. I'm in fact on such a treatment now, and have been for many years. You have
a new clinical trial that you're working with?
Yes, true. Yeah. So it's a study involving ecopipam, and this is an agent that's really going through hopefully the FDA process at this point to really become, if it all is positive, the first approved treatment for stuttering. And the studies are ongoing right now in the United States, and if this is positive, it yields positive results, and then we'll expand outside the U.S. and we're looking at just adults, but looking since stuttering begins in children, looking at adolescents, eventually in the future, and we have other compounds that we are developing as well too.
But what does this stuff really do?
Okay, what it does is it affects the levels of dopamine in the brain, and we know that dopamine is a naturally occurring chemical. And we've studied that the levels can be misaligned in those of us who stutter, and regulating those levels can improve symptoms in many individuals who stutter, but not everyone, but many of them, and can be helpful.
How many people are you studying, and are the trials still open?
They sure are, Hal. Yeah, we're looking in the upper 60s of individuals who stutter around the country. We still have a few spots left to enroll. We have multiple sites. We have 8 sites around the country. We have a couple sites right here in Southern California.
Yeah, we have an address on the screen right now. It's speakfreely.researchstudytrial.com, and that's where people would write in order to try to see if they could be part of your study.
True. Yes. Yeah.
And so I guess I'm sort of still wondering though, how far away are we from something that would be a new something in dealing with stuttering?
Got it. So I would say 2 or 3 years or something is actually FDA approved on the market. And we also have other compounds that we've used for other conditions that we have shown to be beneficial for people who stutter. Not definitively, we say that, but we have limited studies to support that. And this is where science begins.
You know, like anything, there are shades of gray, right? So you have some people that stutter that have a horrible time trying to get their thoughts out. Some people who stutter mildly, some who have learned to deal with it. So it's a rainbow of all kinds of people with all kinds of disorders.
It is, right? So we're learning as well, too, that stuttering may not be one cause. There can be different causes that lead to a symptom that you might see similarly. But that's why it's got to take what I'd say a comprehensive approach to really treat the person who stutters. And that involves and to meet where that patient wants to be, and to give them options. And part of that are the social support groups, or groups like the World Stuttering Network and Friends and others, as well as the psychotherapy that we can provide, focusing on the avoidance and the social anxiety, but then using the pharmacologic treatments to really assist those and to move those along. Just on the same model that we have for the treatment of depression or other anxiety disorders, or even diabetes. We manage diabetes usually through changes of lifestyle and society, diet, but also therapy, support groups, and medication as well, too. The same model for major depressive disorder.
Have you found people that don't want treatment?
That's right.
They just live with what they've got.
They got it, right. But even with those folks, when we talk about treatment, right, there's still a level of acceptance, right? And acceptance, and that's where many of these folks, and I fully support them, and I'm part of that, is going to the different support groups that we have, like at the World Stuttering Network and Friends and others, where they're able to get access and meet with others with that, and then make the informed choice. But it's also because many of our treatments haven't been great. So people get kind of burned out, right? But now there's hope. I would say there's hope. And we're actually seeing many individuals may not have had the best treatment approaches in the past coming back in to receive that treatment.
We have less than 30 seconds. Real quickly, tell people out there that might be stutterers, that might be watching, your best advice for them.
Great. Seek the advice of a great speech language pathologist, and look into comprehensive treatments, and also reach out to your local support group and be informed. Read and make an informed decision for yourself. And also be open. Don't let stuttering rule your life, and you have a lot to say. You have a voice.
Dr. Geraldd Maguire, thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. And that website again is speakfreely.researchstudytrial.com if you want to get more information. And we'll be back with more Fox 11 News in Depth right after this. And finally, if you haven't already, please check out my podcast. It's called What the Hell, and it's available wherever you subscribe to podcasts, or just go to whatthehellpodcast.com. Well, that's it for this week's Fox 11 News in Depth. Thanks for joining us. Have a great week, everybody. And before we go, take a look at some brave workers at the Oakland Zoo who are vaccinating some of the bigger animals against COVID-19, lions and tigers and bears. Oh, my. See you next time.